The feminists have been claiming that there's a gender pay gap for decades now, and they've always been debunked. There is no gender pay gap, there's an earnings gap. Men tend to go into higher earning professions, which are higher earning because they either require way more skilled labor, or they're dangerous and women don't want to do them, or they're physically incapable of doing them. But regardless, there's been an earnings gap, but no pay gap. Yet they keep pushing that myth. So I'm here to tell you guys today, regretfully, I have to inform you that we finally have concrete proof that there is indeed a gender pay gap. It's no longer just a myth. Young whammons now earn 2,200 pounds more than men as gender pay gap goes, well, not into reverse. This is the only direction it's ever been. Crisis of masculinity. You sure that's what this is? But this is par for the course because we've covered multiple stories. Like I think the BBC was one of them where they were accused of paying women less and sexism and pay gap and all that. They did an investigation and then they ended up giving their men raises because it turned out they were overpaying the women. And it happened multiple times at multiple different companies. Now we just got more proof. It just keeps stacking. Young whammons now earn 2,200 pounds more than men, according to a shock report. Yeah. And yet, while they're doing that, they expect a man that earns double their income. And then the man that earns double their income is just looking for a good-looking woman, not a career whammons that girl bossed as opposed to having a family. It means the gender pay gap has reversed. No, it means a gender pay gap has developed. There was never a gender pay gap. Now there is one. So tipping in favor of whammons for the first time in nearly a decade. So experts blame the sudden shift on a crisis among young boys and men, warning that an entire generation is being left behind. If only there were people that were warning about this and calling it out for the past generation, huh? Yeah, too bad you ignored them all or labeled them misogynists. From the day they start primary school to the day they leave higher indoctrination, the progress of boys lags behind girls. Well, what do you think happens when you model the entire public school system around the way girls learn, and then you focus everything on getting girls ahead, and then you tell the boys that they're toxic and they're the problem and they should just stand out of the way and make sacrifices for milady? What result were you expecting? Girls are more likely to reach early learning development than boys, and by A level, they outperform men by more than a grade and a half. Once they are at university, women outnumber men 3-2. Now, that's not the flex you think it is. That's just because men are starting to realize that universities are worthless for the most part. Like, unless you want to get into a rare few professions, like a doctor, obviously, there's no avoiding college. But if you don't want to be one of the few professions that require college, you're better off skipping it. Like another video Aaron Clary did that was spot on. You would be able to afford a house if you didn't go to college. Just think about that. How many people go to college? They're not working while they're in college. They're chewing through sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And then they can't even get a job because their degree was useless anyway. Imagine if they just bought a house and spent those 4 years working. Way better use of your time. At all stages of our indoctrination system, boys are behind, the Lost Boys report said. Well, are they really behind, or are they just realizing the entire system is not worth it and they're leaving? That would be my guess for a lot of them. So it added as a crisis of masculinity in this country, a search for what it means to be a young man growing up in Britain today. It's a self-inflicted crisis because every time a boy tries to be masculine, they get shut down. So eventually they just give up. They're like, oh, okay, if this is how it's going to be, oh, well, I think those Japanese herbivore men know a thing or two. So these factors have led to females aged 16 to 24 earn more than, on average, 26,500 pounds per year. So the other half of this equation that they're not considering, They're saying there's a crisis of masculinity. So they're kind of implying that men are less masculine. Like, you know what the flip side of that is, right? All the masculinity is going towards the whammons. The whammons are getting more masculine. And by comparison, just 2 years earlier, boys and young men had 1,000 pounds more income than girls and young whammons. Yeah, that's because they worked jobs that paid more. Usually because they were riskier or required more skilled training. Or oftentimes, even if they're in the same position. Like, I ranted about this before, but like that seems to be like the primary talking point of the feminazis. Oh, if they got literally the same job title, they should get paid the same, even though one of them has 10 extra years of experience and produces 3 times the work. Oh, but because their job title is the same, they should be paid the same. Yeah. They never consider what could lead to these discrepancies. It's always just sexism. And then when the discrepancy is going the other way, that's not sexism all of a sudden. It was sexism before, but now that it's going the other way, it's not sexism for some weird reason. But male wages have stagnated in recent years due to a combination of factors, with the reports blaming loss of male-dominated industries such as manufacturing, agriculture, and construction that provided secure, well-paid, meaningful jobs that used to be available to non-university indoctrinated men. Yet now it's all going to the migrants. The CSJ highlighted how the number of 16 to 24-year-old males not in indoctrination, employment, or training has surged by 40% since the pandemic. Wow, the NEET population is booming. All right. Men having a lack of self-esteem could also be causing men to hold themselves back from career progression. Well, or they could just be living the minimalist lifestyle. Like, I personally know a lot of men that are doing this on purpose. Once they realized that, a lot of what they were trained to desire was bullshit. Yeah, they started living for themselves. Like, you know what? I'm going to do the bare minimum work so I can maximize my free time and afford my hobbies. And guess what? You don't need all that much money if you cut your expenses. Unless you have a very expensive hobby, like pulling Hogan's, you don't need that much money. So give me my PC and a comfy couch. Oh, I'm in the same boat. All I need is my PC, and I can have access to all sorts of entertainment. I can watch anime on it. I can read manga on it. I can play video games on it. I can make YouTube videos on it. I can produce my own comics on it. I can produce my own video games on it. And I could keep going. That's just off the top of my head. Just give me a PC and a place to put it and a place to rest, enough money to feed myself. We could make this work. I mean, more than 40% of adults now think that society does not value traditional masculine values, because it doesn't. I'm surprised only 40% are smart enough to see it. A survey conducted by the CSJ by Whitestone Insight found. And men are portrayed as a bit pathetic in the media, according to more than half of men age 18 to 24. Yeah, now it was funny when it was occasional. Like, you know what? Homer Simpson's a dumb but lovable guy. Ha ha ha. We can laugh at that from time to time. But when every single man in the media is either Homer Simpson or a villain, it gets old. Former Tory MP and CSJ fellow Miriam Cates said, for too long, politicians, policymakers, and media and the arts have turned a blind eye to the needs of boys in the name of equality. Yeah, that's why I keep reminding people feminism is a female supremacy movement. It's not about equality. It's about elevating women at the expense of men. So yeah, while everyone was concerned about Milady, all of these men and boys were lagging behind because no one cares about them. And all these men and boys, they've taken that lesson to heart. They understand that no one cares about them. So guess what? They reciprocate. They don't care either. If society doesn't care about me and is just going to exploit me for my labor or my money, I'm going to do the same thing for society. I'm going to exploit it for its conveniences. Far from creating equality, we have penalized young men for the crime of being male, labeling them as toxic and problematic, and failing to provide a positive vision of masculinity. Yeah, their positive vision of masculinity is being a woman. Although, to be fair, A lot of current year whammons. I mean, have you seen the chins on your average female video game character? They've turned women into men. So the positive visions of masculinity. I think we're supposed to look at the women for that. Labor's Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, who endorsed the report, described the findings as disaster in our classrooms, on our streets, and in our prisons. He said teenage boys are losing hope for the future, and far too many are falling by the wayside. Are they? Are they falling behind, or are they just falling out of society? Because if they can take care of themselves, like, why should they care? Like, serious question. Why should they care if they can take care of themselves? I know it's for the good of society if they work for society, but if society doesn't appreciate them, why would they? If society just exploits them for what they can do for society, they're just exploiting society for what society can do for them. It's called reciprocity. I think learning reciprocity is something that would help a lot of academia understand what's going on. Well, why don't men care about society? Like, why doesn't society care about men? Which one came first? Lawrence Delagio, a former England rugby union captain and founder of the charity Rugby Works, said young men are treated as the lowest of the low, resulting in a disaster in our classrooms, prison cells, and mortuaries. His charity works to help children who have been excluded from schools, of which 75% are boys. No boys are born bad. They're just born into chaos. They were probably born to single mothers as but no one wants to talk about that. Well, even if that's the case, that's the fault of the deadbeat dad. Yeah, you mean all those deadbeat dads that want to be in their kids' lives, but thanks to parental alienation aren't allowed to be? Like those deadbeat dads? Or the deadbeat dads that don't even know they had a kid because the 304 of a mom doesn't even know who the daddy is? Or the deadbeat dads that know who were driven out of the home by the crazy 304? Now, there are some legit deadbeats out there, but who chose to have kids with them? Who chose to have sex with them? Like, there is very few guys who start out as quote unquote good men and then turn into deadbeats. There are a few, but they're very rare. Most of the time, if a guy is called a deadbeat, it's just a lie, and it's that the story is being spun to favor the single mother. And in the cases where that's not the case, the single mother, knowing what type of man he was, decided to let Chad and Tyrone nut in her and then played the victim. Oh, the bad boy who I knew was a bad boy when I let him cream pie me didn't step up. Yeah, it was all his fault. Oh, the guy I tried to baby trap just disappeared on me. Yeah, I wonder why. Oh, well, not my problem anymore. Yeah, I'm in that group of men that are just walking away. Not going to be our problem. Yeah, we're not the ones that are making videos in our cars at age 45 crying because we can't get a date. There's entire channels dedicated to laughing at the women that do that, though. But that's what we call a you problem.